Galactic Council had been told no. Ambassador Zeth Ka stood silent for a lo. The news of humanity's rejection spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. On the Council homeworld of Centrix Prime, emergency sessions convened in the great crystal chambers where galactic law had been decided for 3 millennia. The Council members sat in shocked silence as Ambassador Zeth Ka's report echoed through the hall. They said no, repeated Council Leader Vorth Prime, his ancient voice filled with disbelief. The massive being had ruled the galaxy for over 1,000 years, and no species had ever refused Council membership during his reign. A primitive species from a backwater system dared to refuse our generous offer? Yes, my lord, Ambassador Zeth Ka replied, his crystal form dimmed with shame. Despite our clear explanation of the benefits, despite the obvious superiority of Council civilization, they chose to remain isolated and uncivilized. The chamber erupted in angry voices as representatives from dozens of alien species expressed their outrage. The very foundation of their peaceful galaxy was built on the principle that all intelligent life would eventually see the wisdom of joining the Council. Humanity had shattered that principle. "This cannot be allowed to stand," declared Admiral Thexmore, commander of the Council's military forces. He was a hulking creature with 4 arms and skin like black metal. If word spreads that a species can refuse membership and face no consequences, others may be inspired to rebel. Council Leader Vorth Prime nodded slowly. In 3,000 years of galactic peace, the Council had perfected their integration process. Every species followed the same pattern: initial contact, demonstration of superior technology, offer of membership, grateful acceptance, and peaceful integration. The system had never failed. Admiral Thexmore, you have permission to proceed with standard enforcement protocols, Vorth Prime announced. This human aberration must be corrected before it spreads. On Earth, humanity prepared for war. Every major city had been evacuated, with civilians moved to underground shelters built during the old nuclear wars. The planet's industrial capacity was converted to military production as factories worked around the clock to build weapons and ammunition. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the alien fleet through the main viewport. 12 massive vessels hung in space like dark mountains, their crystal structures gleaming in the light of Earth's sun. Soon there would be more. "Captain, we're detecting multiple hyperspace signatures," reported Lieutenant Rogers from the communications station. "Looks like they're getting reinforcements." Jake watched as reality seemed to tear open near Mars. Ships began emerging from the glowing rifts in space, each one larger than anything in Earth's fleet. He counted 60 vessels before he stopped. The alien armada now outnumbered humanity's defenders by more than 2 to 1. Admiral Carter's voice came through the speakers from Earth Command. "All ships, this is Command. The enemy fleet is taking attack positions. Prepare for immediate combat operations." Jake looked around his bridge at the young men and women who served under him. Lieutenant Rogers was barely 25, fresh out of the academy with dreams of exploring the stars. Ensign Tony Martinez was even younger, just 22, with a picture of his girlfriend taped to his console. They were all so young, and they were all about to die fighting an enemy they had no hope of defeating. But Jake also saw something else in their faces: determination, courage, the same stubborn refusal to surrender that had brought humanity this far. "All hands, this is the captain," he announced over the ship's intercom. "In a few minutes, we're going to fight the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Our odds of survival are close to 0. Our orders are simple. Make them pay for every inch of space and protect Earth as long as possible. He paused, looking out at the approaching alien fleet. I want you all to know that I'm proud to serve with you. Whatever happens next, we're going to show these aliens what humans are made of. The first shots came without warning. Brilliant beams of plasma energy lanced out from the Council ships, targeting Earth's orbital defense platforms. The massive space stations, built to defend against human enemies, exploded like fireworks against the alien weapons. Captain Morrison ordered his ship forward, leading the human fleet in a desperate charge against the alien line. The Defender was small compared to the enemy vessels, but it was fast and heavily armed with the best weapons humanity could build. Target the lead ship, Jake ordered. Fire everything we have. The Defender's main guns opened fire, sending streams of superheated metal at near-light speed toward the alien flagship. The kinetic projectiles struck the enemy shields with tremendous force, causing ripples of energy to spread across the barrier. The aliens responded with plasma cannons that could melt through a mountain. Beams of pure energy reached out for the human ships, but Captain Morrison had studied their attack patterns. The aliens fired in precise, calculated volleys designed for maximum efficiency against stationary targets. Evasive maneuvers, Jake shouted. Random pattern delta. The human ships scattered like a school of fish, each one following a different, unpredictable course. The alien targeting computers, programmed for the orderly battles typical among Council species, couldn't track the chaotic human movements. Lieutenant Commander Kate Foster led a squadron of human fighters in a desperate attack run against one of the smaller Council ships. Her pilots flew like madmen, diving and weaving through enemy fire with no regard for formation or safety. This is insane, her wingman, Lieutenant Pete Wilson, said over the radio as laser fire filled the space around them. We're supposed to be dead already. Then let's make sure we take some of them with us, Kate replied, lining up her targeting sight on the alien ship's crystal superstructure. The human fighters carried experimental fusion warheads, designed to penetrate enemy shields through brute force rather than technology. Kate's torpedo struck the alien hull and detonated with the power of a small star. The explosion sent cracks running through the crystal armor, and atmosphere began venting from the damaged sections. But for every small victory, humanity paid a terrible price. The human ship. Courage exploded under concentrated enemy fire, taking all hands with it. The destroyer Valiant lost its main engines and drifted helplessly until plasma beams reduced it to glowing debris. Admiral Thex Moore watched the battle from his flagship, confused by what he was seeing. The humans were fighting with a savagery that defied all military logic. Their ships should have surrendered after the first exchange of fire, but instead they kept attacking even when victory was impossible. Sir, the human vessel Freedom is on a collision course with our port flank, reported his tactical officer. The admiral looked at the display in disbelief. The human ship was badly damaged, its hull torn open and its weapons destroyed. But instead of surrendering, its crew was attempting to ram their vessel into his ship. They're going to suicide themselves against us? He asked in shock. Yes, sir. Their crew is abandoning ship, but they're maintaining course and speed. The admiral had never seen anything like it. In 3,000 years of Council military operations, no enemy had ever deliberately destroyed their own ships to damage his forces. The very idea was incomprehensible to species that had been bred for peaceful cooperation. The Freedom struck the Council ship amidships, its nuclear reactor overloading. On impact, The explosion tore through both vessels, sending metal and crystal debris spinning through space. Hundreds of aliens died in the blast, the first Council military casualties in over a millennium. Engineer Sam Davis coordinated the defense of Earth's orbital shipyards from his command post on Luna Station. The moon-based facility was humanity's last chance to build replacement ships, but it was also an obvious target for the enemy fleet. "Sam, we've got 6 Council ships heading straight for us," reported Chief Engineer Lucy Adams from her position at the defensive controls. "Their plasma cannons will cut through our shields like paper." Sam looked at the tactical display, calculating distances and firing solutions. The alien ships were too fast and too well armored for conventional weapons to stop them. But humanity had never relied on conventional solutions. "Activate the mass driver," he ordered. The lunar mass driver was a giant magnetic cannon designed to launch cargo pods to Earth. But Sam's team had modified it to fire solid metal slugs at incredible velocity. The projectiles had no guidance systems or warheads, just raw kinetic energy. The first slug struck the lead Council ship at 30 kilometers per second. The alien shields, designed to deflect energy weapons, offered no protection against solid matter moving at such speed. The projectile punched through the hull like it was made of paper, causing massive internal explosions. "Direct hit," Lucy announced with grim satisfaction. 1 down, 5 to go, but Sam knew they couldn't hold out for long. The mass driver took several minutes to recharge between shots, and the aliens were already adapting their tactics to avoid the slow-moving projectiles. Back on Earth, Colonel Ben Shaw prepared his ground forces for invasion. The aliens would eventually land troops to occupy the major cities, and when they did, humanity would be ready for them. Ben had studied every historical example of guerrilla warfare, from ancient tribal conflicts to modern urban combat. The aliens might have news of Earth's resistance spread across the galaxy like wildfire. On the mining world of Kepler-7, former warriors of the draconian species gathered in secret to watch the forbidden broadcasts from the human homeworld. For 300 years, their people had served the Council peacefully, their warlike nature suppressed by genetic modification and careful breeding. Vex Karn, a draconian overseer at the primary mining facility, watched the images of human ships ramming alien vessels, with something he had almost forgotten how to feel: admiration. His own people had been proud warriors once, before the Council offered them peace and prosperity in exchange for their independence. "Look at them fight," whispered Zorthek, an older draconian whose grandfather had been alive during the last days of their freedom. "They would rather die than submit." "It is madness," replied another worker, but his voice carried uncertainty rather than conviction. "The Council offers them everything: peace, technology, safety from the dangers of the galaxy." Vex Karn felt something stirring in his chest, a feeling that had been buried for generations. What good is safety if you must become a slave to achieve it? The words hung in the air like a challenge. For the first time in centuries, Draconians were questioning the wisdom of their surrender. On Earth, Admiral Thexmore faced a military situation unlike anything in Council history. His forces controlled orbital space around the planet, but every attempt to establish ground control met with fierce resistance. Human soldiers appeared from nowhere, struck hard, and vanished before his troops could respond. "Sir, we've lost another landing party," reported his aide, a nervous Centaurian with pale blue skin. "The humans attacked the supply depot with chemical explosives. 12 dead, 20 wounded." The Admiral studied tactical reports from 3 different continents. Every Council landing met the same pattern. Initial success followed by constant harassment from human guerrilla fighters. His troops, trained for peacekeeping operations on compliant worlds, had no experience dealing with such resistance. "These humans fight like wild animals," he said to Ambassador Zeth Ka, who had remained aboard the flagship to observe the military operation. "They have no regard for their own lives." The crystalline diplomat seemed troubled by the reports. "In 3,000 years of Council expansion, no species has ever behaved this way. Even the most primitive worlds surrender when faced with overwhelming force." "Well, these humans don't seem to understand that they're beaten," Admiral Thexmore replied grimly. "Every time we destroy one of their positions, 10 more appear. It's like fighting smoke." Dr. Helen Price had spent the last week broadcasting her genetic research across galactic communication networks. Her analysis of Council species DNA showed clear evidence of biological manipulation spanning centuries. The message was simple, but explosive. The Council maintained peace by breeding the fight out of their subject species. On the water world of Aquatica, dolphin-like beings called the cetaceans received Dr. Price's data through their underwater communication networks. They had joined the Council willingly 500 years ago, grateful for the technology that allowed them to explore the galaxy beyond their ocean home. But now they learned that their peaceful nature wasn't entirely natural. The Council had subtly modified their genes to reduce territorial instincts and increase cooperation. The knowledge spread through their pod networks like ripples across water. Pod leader Sonic Wave called an emergency gathering in the deep trenches where Council monitors couldn't observe them. Hundreds of cetaceans came from across the globe, their bioluminescent patterns flashing with excitement and anger. "Brothers and sisters," Sonic Wave sang in the complex harmonies of his language, "we have learned a terrible truth. Our peace was purchased with our freedom, and we never knew the price we paid." Young cetaceans, who had never known war, listened in amazement as their elders described the violent territorial battles that had once marked their species. Those instincts had been carefully bred away, leaving them content to serve Council interests, without question. Meanwhile, in the Outer Rim territories, the Andromedan colonies received reports of humanity's resistance through their long-range communication arrays. The Andromedans were a proud species of insectoid beings who had maintained some independence by settling far from Council core worlds. Queen Hive Mother Zektal convened her war council in the great hexagonal chambers beneath New Andromeda's primary hive. Unlike most Council species, the Andromedans had never fully submitted to genetic modification, claiming religious objections to altering their God-given forms. "The humans fight alone against impossible odds," she clicked to her assembled generals. "They show us what we once were before we learned to bow before alien masters." "But Mother Queen," replied General Buzz Keck, "the humans will surely lose. The Council fleet is too powerful." "Yes, they will lose," Zektal agreed. "But they will lose as free beings, not as slaves, and their example will live on after their deaths." Back on Earth, Captain Morrison led what remained of the human fleet in increasingly desperate attacks against the Council armada. Of the original 30 ships, only 8 remained operational. But those 8 ships had learned to fight in ways the aliens couldn't predict or counter. "Captain, enemy formation is moving to intercept course," reported Lieutenant Rogers from her position at the tactical station. Her uniform was torn and stained from the constant battles, but her voice remained steady. Jake studied the tactical display, looking for any weakness in the alien formation. The Council ships moved with mechanical precision, following patterns that had worked for 3,000 years of easy victories. "They're still fighting the last war," he said to his crew. "They expect us to behave like every other species they've conquered." Lieutenant Commander Kate Foster led the surviving fighter squadrons in hit-and-run attacks against the alien fleet's flanks. Her pilots flew damaged ships held together with spare parts and prayer, but they still managed to find gaps in the enemy's defenses. "Kate, you've got 3 bogeys on your tail," warned her wingman over the radio. "I see them," she replied, throwing her fighter into a spiraling dive that no sane pilot would attempt. The alien pursuers tried to follow but couldn't match the crazy maneuver. Kate pulled out of the dive at the last second and fired a full spread of missiles at the nearest Council ship. The explosions sent ripples across the alien shields, and Kate allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. They couldn't win this war, but they were teaching the galaxy an important lesson. Some things were worth fighting for, even when victory was impossible. On the surface of Earth, Colonel Ben Shaw coordinated resistance operations from a series of underground bunkers connected by old subway tunnels. His forces had been reduced to less than 1,000 active fighters, but they continued to harass alien occupation forces throughout the major cities. "Ben, we just took out another supply." "Convoy," reported Major Sarah Collins over the encrypted radio network. "But they're bringing in heavier security. Looks like they're finally taking us seriously." Ben smiled grimly as he studied maps of the city marked with red symbols showing alien positions. The Council forces controlled the major buildings and transportation hubs, but they couldn't control the spaces between them. Every street corner could hide a human sniper. Every building might contain a bomb. "Good," he replied. "The more troops they tie up trying to hold Earth, the fewer they have available to suppress the rebellions starting on other worlds." That was the real victory, Ben knew. Not the battles they were fighting in Earth's streets, but the inspiration they were providing to oppressed beings across the galaxy. Every human who died fighting sent a message. Freedom was possible if you were willing to pay the price. The turning point came when Commander Lucy Adams led a desperate assault team against the Council flagship in orbit around Earth. Her mission was supposed to be impossible: board an alien ship, fight through their security forces, and capture critical intelligence about Council operations. Lucy's team of 12 volunteers launched from Luna Station in a modified cargo pod designed to look like space debris. They drifted for 6 hours through the battle zone, playing dead while Council ships passed nearby. When they finally reached the flagship, they used magnetic charges to breach the hull near what their sensors indicated was a data storage area. The explosion sent them tumbling into the alien ship's crystal corridors. The Council security forces weren't prepared for armed humans inside their most secure vessel. Lucy's team fought with knives and pistols against aliens armed with energy weapons, but the close quarters favored the humans' aggressive tactics. "Move! Move! Move!" Lucy shouted as her team advanced through corridors filled with floating crystal formations and strange organic computers. "We've got maybe 10 minutes before they seal this section." They reached the main data core just as alien reinforcements arrived. The firefight was brief but brutal, with humans and aliens dying in the beautiful crystal chamber that served as the ship's brain. Lucy's computer specialist, Sergeant Mike Roberts, worked frantically to download files while his teammates held the entrance. "Almost got it," he said, fingers flying over the alien interface they had learned to operate through captured equipment. "Hurry up," Lucy replied, firing at shapes moving in the corridor outside. "We've got company coming." The data download compil The war for Earth reached a stalemate that no one had expected. Admiral Thex Moore controlled the space around the planet, but he couldn't break the human resistance on the surface. Every day brought new reports of attacks on his forces, and every victory seemed to cost more than it was worth. But the real crisis wasn't happening on Earth. Across the galaxy, 12 Council-member worlds had declared independence, and more were joining the rebellion every day. The carefully maintained peace that had lasted 3,000 years was crumbling. On Kepler 7, Vex Karn led an army of awakened Draconians against the Council garrison. The genetic modifications that had made his people peaceful were breaking down as their warrior instincts reasserted themselves. Mining equipment became weapons of war as the Draconians fought to reclaim their world. For freedom, Vex Karn roared in the ancient battle cry of his people, a sound that hadn't been heard for centuries. For the right to choose our own destiny. The Council forces on Kepler 7 were overwhelmed within days. They had expected to face the same passive resistance that had marked previous uprisings. Instead, they faced reborn warriors who fought with the fury of generations of suppressed anger. Similar scenes played out on Aquatica, where the cetaceans used their mastery of biological systems to poison the water supplies of Council installations. The dolphin-like beings sang war songs in frequencies that shattered crystal technology, turning their peaceful nature against their oppressors. Emperor Vorth Prime faced the greatest crisis in Council history. His advisors crowded around the great crystal throne, their voices blending into a chorus of panic and confusion. "My lord, we have lost contact with 15 worlds in the past week," reported Defense Minister Kralvex. "The rebellions are spreading faster than we can respond to them." "How is this possible?" Vorth Prime demanded. His ancient voice carried the weight of 1,000 years of absolute authority, but now that authority was cracking. "Our peace has lasted for 3 millennia. How can one primitive species destroy everything we have built?" Ambassador Zeth Ka stepped forward, his crystal form dimmed with shame. "My lord, the humans have done something we never anticipated. They have reminded the galaxy what freedom means." The Emperor's rage filled the throne room with crackling energy. Freedom is chaos. Freedom is war. Freedom is the destruction of civilized order. "Perhaps," Zethkar replied quietly. "But it is also the one thing that sentient beings will die for." On Earth, Captain Morrison received an unexpected message through the hyperspace communication network. It was from Vex Karn on Kepler 7, transmitted on an emergency frequency that somehow reached through the Council blockade. "Human warriors," the Draconian leader's voice growled through the speakers. "We have heard your call to freedom. The fire you lit on your world has spread to ours. We stand with you against the Council's tyranny." Jake felt something he hadn't experienced in months. Hope. Earth wasn't fighting alone anymore. Across the galaxy, other species were choosing to fight rather than submit. "This is Captain Morrison of the Earth Defense Fleet," he replied. "We're honored to stand with you, Vex Karn. How many worlds have joined the rebellion?" 18 so far, with more declaring independence each day, came the reply. "The Council is dividing their forces to fight on multiple fronts. Their stranglehold on the galaxy is weakening." Admiral Thex Moore received orders from Emperor Vorth Prime that filled him with dread. He was commanded to destroy Earth completely, using weapons that would sterilize the entire planet. It was the ultimate solution to the human problem, but it would also destroy any chance of peaceful resolution with the other rebellious worlds. "Sir, the planet killer weapons are charging," reported his weapons officer. "We can begin the bombardment in 1 hour." The admiral stared at the blue planet hanging in space before his fleet. Somewhere down there, human families huddled in shelters, waiting for death. Children who had never known war were about to die because their parents chose freedom over safety. For the first time in his military career, Admiral Thexmore hesitated to follow orders. The humans had shown him something he hadn't seen in centuries: the courage to fight for principles rather than survival. Could he really destroy an entire world just to preserve the Council's authority? His moment of doubt was interrupted by an alarm from the sensor station. "Sir, multiple hyperspace signatures detected. Large fleet emerging from jump space." But these weren't Council reinforcements. Ships were arriving from every rebellious world in the galaxy, a mixture of captured Council vessels and hastily converted civilian craft. The rebellion had come to Earth. Vex Karn's voice echoed across all frequencies. "Council fleet, this is the Free Worlds Alliance. You are ordered to withdraw from Earth space immediately." Admiral Thexmore looked at his tactical display in amazement. He faced not just human defenders, but ships from dozens of different species. The rebellion had become a full-scale galactic war. "Sir, what are your orders?" asked his aide. The admiral thought about 3,000 years of Council peace maintained, through fear and control. Then he thought about the humans who chose to die rather than surrender their freedom. Finally, he thought about what kind of galaxy he wanted to leave for future generations. "All ships, stand down," he ordered. "Cease all offensive operations." The bridge fell silent as his officers stared at him in shock. "Sir, the Emperor's orders were clear," his second-in-command protested. "The Emperor's orders would make us murderers," Admiral Thexmore replied. "I've spent my career maintaining peace through force. Perhaps it's time to try maintaining peace through justice." 3 days later, Emperor Vorth Prime himself arrived at Earth aboard the massive Council Dreadnought Eternal Order. The ship was 5 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to destroy entire star systems. It was the ultimate symbol of Council authority. But it arrived at a very different battlefield than the Emperor expected. Human ships flew alongside Draconian cruisers and cetacean biovessels. The rebels had formed a defensive line around Earth that included species from across the galaxy. President Hayes received an invitation to meet with the Emperor aboard a neutral space station hastily constructed between the two fleets. For the first time in galactic history, the Council was offering to negotiate with rebels as equals rather than subjects. The meeting took place in a simple metal chamber with representatives from both sides sitting across a plain table. Emperor Vorth Prime was massive, nearly 3 meters tall with skin like living rock and eyes that glowed with inner fire. He had ruled the galaxy for longer than human civilization had existed. "I do not understand your species," the Emperor said to President Hayes. "We offered you everything: peace, prosperity, security, advancement. Why do you choose war and chaos instead?" President Hayes looked across the table at the being who had controlled the fate of trillions of lives for centuries. "Because peace without freedom isn't peace. It's just a beautiful prison." "Freedom leads to conflict," Vorth Prime replied. "Without central authority, species fight endless wars over resources and territory." "Maybe," President Hayes agreed. "But at least they fight as themselves, not as modified servants bred to be obedient." The Emperor was silent for a long moment. Around them, representatives from dozens of species waited to hear what would shape the future of the galaxy. "What do you propose?" Vorth Prime finally asked. "Simple," President Hayes replied. Give the member worlds a choice. Those who want to remain under council protection can do so. Those who want independence get it. And those who want something in between can negotiate their own terms. That would mean the end of galactic order as we know it, the Emperor said. No, President Hayes corrected. It would mean the beginning of galactic justice. The negotiations took weeks, but eventually an agreement was reached. The Council would maintain its authority over worlds that chose to remain members, but those worlds would have the right to leave if they wished. Independent worlds would form their own alliance for mutual defense against external threats. Admiral Thexmore resigned from Council service and was elected as the first commander of the Free World's Defense Force. His knowledge of Council military tactics proved invaluable in establishing defenses against hardline factions that refused to accept the new order. Captain Morrison was promoted to Admiral and given command of the human contribution to the Alliance fleet. His ships carried a simple message to every corner of the galaxy. Freedom was possible for those brave enough to fight for it. 5 years after first contact, Ambassador Zeth Ka visited Earth as part of a cultural exchange program. He walked through the streets of New York, observing human children at play in Central Park. They ran and laughed and fought mock battles with toy weapons, their natural aggression channeled into games and competition. I still do not fully understand your species, he admitted to President Hayes as they watched the children play. Your nature seems so violent, so chaotic. Yet you have built a civilization that values both strength and compassion, Sirit. Hayes smiled as he watched a group of kids arguing over the rules of their game, then working together to solve the problem. Maybe that's because we never forgot that conflict and cooperation aren't opposites. The massive space station called Nexus Prime floated in the dark between stars. Ships from 12 different alien races filled the docking bays. Inside the main hall, beings that looked nothing like humans sat around a huge round table. The air felt thick with tension. Jake Morrison adjusted his dark blue uniform and looked around the room. He had been Earth's top diplomat for 15 years. He had made deals with creatures that breathed poison gas and beings made of living crystal. But today felt different. Today felt like the end of something. Across from him sat High Chancellor Vextar. The alien leader had 4 arms and skin like gray leather. His black eyes showed no emotion as he spoke through a translation device that turned his clicks and hisses into English. Humans have become a problem, Vextar said. His voice came out flat and cold. You expand too fast. You build too many ships. You ask too many questions. Jake kept his face calm, but inside he felt anger growing. Behind him sat Admiral Lisa Parker, the head of Earth's Space Navy. She wore her military uniform with pride. Her jaw was tight as she listened to the alien's words. We are not expanding faster than the rules allow, Jake said. Every colony we build follows galactic law. Every ship we make has been reported to the Council. Vextar's 4 hands moved in dismissive gestures. The law was written for normal species. Humans are not normal. In 20 years, you have gone from 1 small planet to 50 colonies. Most races take centuries to do what you have done in decades. Around the table, other alien leaders nodded. The Zephyrians looked like walking diamonds. Their crystal bodies rang like bells when they moved. The Klaxon ambassador resembled a giant insect with too many legs and eyes that glowed red. The ethereals were harder to see clearly. They looked like clouds of glowing gas that changed shape constantly, Only one alien seemed uncomfortable. Ambassador Kell of the Tauri shifted in his seat. His people looked almost human, but with blue skin and silver hair. The Tauri had been Earth's first contact with alien life 20 years ago. "What exactly are you asking us to do?" Jake asked, though he already suspected the answer would not be good. Vextar leaned forward. "The Galactic Council has decided on new rules for humanity. First, no more colonies. You may keep what you have, but you cannot expand further. Second, all human military ships must be cut in half. You can keep defense fleets, but nothing that could threaten Council members. Third, all human colonies will have Council observers to watch your activities." Jake felt the blood drain from his face. "You are asking us to give up our independence." "We are asking you to accept your place," Vexitar replied. "Humanity is young. You need guidance. The galaxy has been peaceful for 300 years. We will not let one aggressive species destroy that peace." Admiral Parker spoke for the first time. "Aggressive? We have never attacked anyone. Every war we have fought was in self-defense against pirates or raiders." The Klaxon ambassador clicked his mandibles together in what passed for laughter among his kind. "You destroyed the Ravager fleet completely. 40 ships turned to space. Dust. No survivors. They attacked our mining colony on Series 7, Parker shot back. "They killed 3,000 civilians. We warned them to surrender. They chose to fight to the death." "That is exactly what we mean," Vexitar said. "Other species would have captured some prisoners. Humans leave no enemies alive. This is not how civilized beings behave." Jake looked around the table at faces that showed no sympathy. These beings had made up their minds before the meeting started. This was not a negotiation. This was a demand for surrender. "The Council has made similar offers to other species in the past," Jake said carefully. "What happened to those who refused?" Silence filled the room. Finally, the ethereal representative spoke. Its voice sounded like wind through leaves. "The Corlin Combine refused our guidance. They no longer exist." The threat was clear. Jake had read about the Corlan. They had been a proud warrior race that controlled 20 star systems. When they rejected the Council's demands for submission, a coalition of Council fleets had wiped them out completely. Not just their military, their entire civilization. "You would commit genocide?" Jake asked. "We would restore peace," Vextar answered. "The choice is yours. Accept our generous offer or face the consequences of defying the Council." Jake looked back at Admiral Parker. Her hand rested near her sidearm, though they both knew weapons would be useless here. The station had shields that could stop anything short of a nuclear bomb. "We need time to consider your offer," Jake said. "Of course," Vextar replied, but his tone suggested he expected only one answer. "You have 72 hours to give us your response. The Council fleet will wait at the edge of your space. If you accept our terms, they will escort you back to Earth to begin the transition. If you refuse..." He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. The other Council members began to file out of the room. Ambassador Kell paused beside Jake's chair. "I am sorry," he whispered. "I argued against this, but I was outvoted. My people remember what it was like to be forced into submission. We recovered. But it took centuries." "Why are they doing this?" Jake asked quietly. Kell glanced around to make sure no one was listening. "Because they are afraid. Humanity advances too fast. Your technology improves every year. Your people adapt to any challenge. The Council has ruled the galaxy for millennia by keeping everyone else weak and dependent. You threaten that system just by existing. The Towery ambassador hurried away, leaving Jake and Admiral Parker alone in the vast chamber. They are not giving us a choice, Parker said. This is surrender or death. Jake stood up slowly. His legs felt weak. He had spent his entire career building relationships with alien species. He had believed that understanding and cooperation could solve any problem. Now he realized that some beings saw those qualities as weaknesses to exploit. We need to get back to Earth immediately, Jake said. The President needs to know what we are facing. As they walked toward their ship, Admiral Parker asked the question that was eating at both of them. Do you think they know? Jake knew what she meant. For 20 years, while humanity had been playing the role of eager junior partners in galactic civilization, they had also been preparing for the day when diplomacy might fail. Projects that the Council knew nothing about, weapons and defenses that existed in secret, plans that had been made by people who understood that not everyone in the galaxy wanted humanity to succeed. I hope not, Jake answered, because if they did know, they would not be giving us 72 hours to think about it. They would be attacking right now. Their ship launched from Nexus Prime and jumped to faster-than-light speed. Behind them, the Council's representatives were already making plans for humanity's future as a client species. Ahead of them, Earth waited for news that would change everything. Jake stared out at the stars and wondered if this was the last time humans would travel between them as free beings. In 3 days, humanity would give their answer to the Galactic Council's ultimatum. He just hoped that answer would not be the last thing they ever said as an independent species. President Karen Walsh stood behind the podium in the United Earth Assembly Building. The Great Hall was packed with representatives from every human colony and settlement. Delegates from Luna City sat next to farmers from the Outer Rim worlds. Military officers in dress uniforms filled entire rows. The president looked older than her 60 years. The past 3 days had been the hardest of her life. She had barely slept since Ambassador Morrison and Admiral Parker returned from Nexus Prime with news of the Council's ultimatum. Citizens of Earth and all human colonies, President Walsh began, we face the greatest challenge in our species, history. The Galactic Council has demanded that we surrender our independence. They want us to become their servants. Angry voices rose from the crowd. Some delegates shouted questions. Others demanded action. The president raised her hand for silence. Let me be clear about what they are asking, she continued. No more new colonies. Half our military destroyed. Alien observers watching our every move. They call this guidance. I call it slavery. In the front row, Dr. Eric Thompson shifted uncomfortably. He was the head of Earth's Secret Research Division. For 20 years, his team had been working on projects that could change the balance of power in the galaxy, projects that the Galactic Council knew nothing about. We have spent 3 days discussing our options, the president said. I have spoken with our military leaders, our scientists, our philosophers, and our historians. The question is simple. Do we surrender our freedom to buy temporary peace? Or do we stand up for what we believe is right? Admiral Parker stood up from her seat. The crowd fell silent as she walked to the podium. She had commanded Earth's space forces through 3 major conflicts. Pirates, raiders, and rogue states had all learned to fear her name. The Galactic Council thinks we are weak, Admiral Parker said. They believe that because we are young, we must be helpless. They are wrong. She turned to face the assembly. I have served in Earth's military for 30 years. I have seen what humans can do when their backs are against the wall. We do not break. We do not surrender. We adapt and overcome. The crowd erupted in cheers. The Admiral waited for quiet before continuing. The Council fleet has 2,000 ships. They think this makes them invincible. But they are fighting the last war, not the next one. They believe their old technology and ancient tactics will be enough to defeat us. Dr. Thompson nodded slightly. He knew what the Admiral meant. The aliens had superior numbers, but human technology had advanced far beyond what the Council suspected. If we choose to fight, Admiral Parker continued, it will not be a fair fight. It will not be honorable. It will be the kind of war that humans have always won, by being smarter, faster, and more ruthless than our enemies. President Walsh returned to the podium. The choice is ours to make. We can accept the Council's terms and live as their subjects. Our children and grandchildren will grow up knowing that humanity chose fear over freedom. She paused and looked out at the hundreds of faces staring back at her. These people represented billions of humans across dozens of worlds. They had come to hear what their leaders had decided about their future. Or we can reject their ultimatum and show them that some species cannot be caged. We can prove that humanity will not bow down to bullies, no matter how powerful they think they are. The President's voice grew stronger. I have made my decision. With the full support of Earth's government and military, humanity's answer to the Galactic Council is no. We will not surrender. We will not submit. We will remain free. The hall exploded with noise. Delegates jumped to their feet, cheering and applauding. Some were crying. Others were shouting defiant slogans. The sound was so loud that the President had to wait several minutes before she could speak again. Meanwhile, in secret military bases across human space, orders were already going out. Captain Roy Mitchell received his sealed instructions aboard the destroyer HMS Vengeance. He read the mission parameters twice, then smiled grimly. Operation Defiant Stand was beginning. On Titan Base, Colonel Amy Rodriguez gathered her Marine units for a special briefing. The soldiers listened in silence as she explained what was coming. These were not ordinary troops. They were volunteers who had trained for this exact scenario for years. The aliens think they know how humans fight, Colonel Rodriguez told her. Troops. They studied our history. They saw our wars against each other. They think we are just another primitive species with crude weapons and simple tactics. She activated a holographic display showing alien ship designs. They are wrong. We have been preparing for this day since first contact. Every alien ship that visited Earth was scanned. Every piece of technology we could trade for or steal has been studied. We know their weaknesses better than they do. Back in the assembly hall, President Walsh was finishing her speech. We are not seeking war, she said. We never wanted this fight. But if the Council insists on treating us as enemies, they will discover what human enemies are truly capable of. The message was transmitted to every human settlement simultaneously. On Mars, colonists gathered in the red dust outside their domed cities to hear their president speak. In the asteroid belt, miners stopped their work to listen. On the frontier worlds at the edge of human space, farmers and settlers cheered as Walsh's words reached them. The official response to the Galactic Council was much shorter than the president's speech. Ambassador Morrison had written it himself, in just 2 sentences. Humanity respectfully declines the Council's generous offer. We look forward to continued diplomatic relations as equals. When High Chancellor Vexitar received the message on his flagship, he read it 3 times. Then he threw the datapad across his command center. "Fools!" he snarled. "They have no idea what they have chosen." His aide, a younger member of the hegemony, with only 2 arms instead of 4, picked up the broken device. "Sir, perhaps we should reconsider. The humans have been peaceful for 20 years. Maybe we can find another solution." Vextar's 4 hands clenched into fists. Peace? They destroyed the Ravager fleet completely. They have fought 7 wars in 20 years and won them all. This is not a peaceful species. This is a threat that must be eliminated before it grows stronger. The Chancellor activated the fleet communication system. His voice reached every ship in the massive armada waiting at the edge of human space. "All units, this is High Chancellor Vextar. The humans have chosen war. Activate battle protocols. We move into their space in 12 hours. Across the fleet, alien officers began preparing for what they expected to be a short conflict. Intelligence reports suggested that humans had perhaps 200 military ships total. Against the Council's 2,000 vessels, it would be a massacre. But intelligence reports can be wrong. On Earth, Dr. Thompson was already activating systems that the Galactic Council had no idea existed. Hidden installations across human space received coded signals. Weapons platforms that looked like ordinary asteroids began powering up. Ships that had been disguised as cargo haulers revealed their true nature. Admiral Parker stood in Earth's military command center, watching displays that showed the real strength of humanity's defenses. The aliens were about to learn that humans had spent 20 years preparing for this exact moment. "All units report ready," her communications officer announced. "Good," Admiral Parker replied. "When the Council fleet crosses into human space, they will find out what happens when you corner a species that refuses to be caged." The 72-hour deadline had passed. Humanity had given their answer. Now it was time to see if they could back up their words with action. The galaxy was about to discover what humans had always known about themselves. They were at their most dangerous when someone told them they had no choice.